And welcome to the latest episode of Mark Ones in the community. Now, since my shout out, I have been absolutely inundated with emails galore from a lot of people regarding having their car featured, and I'm absolutely gobsmacked because I had a rough figure of what I thought it might be in my head, and I had to times that by about six of what I've actually received. So forgive me if I've been slow to react to emails, but quite frankly, it's been a balancing act. So I will get round to everybody, but the truth is, there's no guarantee that it will be done anytime soon because I've got everything else that's going on with the channel and pretty much my whole life. But put it that way. The car that I am now going to feature is owned by a chap called Adam, who has been following me for a very long time, and as a result of my videos, it inspired him, in part at least, to buy his own Ford Focus Mark 1, and here it is. This is a 1.6 LX on a 2005 plate, so we're talking about a very late model here. So this would have most likely been manufactured at the start of 2005 because I know there was a bit of a crossover between the Mark IIs and the Mark 1 production. There's always a bit of a 3 or 4 month crossover with the old outgoing model and the new model. They did the same with the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs. There was an interchange of about 6 months or so, around about 6 months I would say, because I can recall them actually selling Mark IIs well into 2011, and there was certainly 2012 plate Mark IIs, believe it or not, but they would have been made a while back but not registered early enough. And this is an example of that. There were registrations that were going to 55 on Mark 1s, an 06. I've seen an 07 registered Mark 1 because it took quite a few years for dealers to actually move them on, especially as the Mark II was had already been established in 2005. And for somebody to have bought a Mark 1 in 2005, they're obviously looking at a bargain. And whoever the original owner of this car was, or any 2005 registered Mark 1, they would have definitely had some really good super duper deals from the dealers. I said that really last second, didn't I? Super duper deeper, or whatever it is. But this car is an absolutely treasured example from what I can see. Adam bought this car 6 months ago. Well, it would be at the time of this video 7, maybe 8 months ago. And this was at the back of watching some of my videos, as I've said. So I am absolutely gobsmacked that I've actually influenced people to do this, because this is entirely exactly what I was intending. And you know, these cars are easy to maintain in relation to a lot of other cars from its age. And I think people have identified this and gone with the flow. And Adam's certainly done that. And there was a couple of other reasons why he wanted a Mark 1. Now, I'm going to read an extract because I think it's a really good idea, this. This is a 1.6 LX. So you'd have had electric windows, air conditioning, and you'd had a fewer extra toys chucked in. And being an 05 plate, it may come with things, it may not. Obviously, an LX does not come with front fog lights, so there's just the blanks at the front there. There's a couple of things you really didn't get. The seats don't have bolsters on them. They're kind of like shadow flat seats, especially the front ones. So you can kind of slide around a bit when you're going around the corners. That's kind of how I see it. I mean, the interior is really nice and clean. Very little, I think there's actually, it's really tidy. The seats look extremely tidy. They did change the pattern of the seats on the later LX ones to something different from the earlier ones. But that is a really, really nice example from what I can see inside. And this car, I'll tell you now, he only did 31,000 miles when he bought it, when Adam bought it. And when he bought it, I think he paid 1,700. What an absolute bargain. Now, 1,700, some people would argue, is slightly on the high side. Well, of course, because it's a low mileage car. And I would say 31 is on the cusp of being too low mileage for me. And there is a lot of risks you take with a too lower mileage Ford Focus Mark 1. Lack of use has a lot of problems on its own, and this has been well documented in many of my videos, and I won't repeat half of it again, but there is a limit to what I would say is advisable unless you are willing to dip your hand in your pocket for a lot of perishables, I'll put it that way. Now, as I was going to say, Adam's email was really thorough, and I read the email, and Adam, I really liked the way you actually worded it. It wasn't like a draft or bits and pieces that maybe some people send to me, some people don't. But I like the fact that you wrote it really thoroughly in your own words, and I'm actually going to repeat exactly what you wrote in your email in this video because I think you got it slap bang on, and I'm going to read it out now. So, Adam's writ, I bought it in November 2022, so I've had the car around 6 months, so it'd be 8 months now. I became interested in owning a Mark 1 Focus after watching several of your YouTube videos, especially the buyer's guide, which was significant in convincing me to take the plunge. I'm really pleased about that, Adam, because the buyer's guide is, you know, I tell you what, you couldn't have got a more thorough video from me, and that is me trying my absolute best. I've improved since then. I've also had a bit of nostalgia as my parents had a Mark 1 Focus 1.6 CL estate. Now I will cut this off here actually. A 1.6 CL estate, you could only get an estate. So it's very rare to actually get a CL estate, I'll tell you. Most people opted for an LX estate. There would be very few people who'd have bought CLs, and even an estate version. Basically, you're buying a box standard car, but you want the maximum amount of space for the money. That suggests someone who may have been possibly in the trade. That car would have probably started with someone in the trade because they would have not, obviously they had less money to spend, but they wanted maximum capability. And a 1.6 CL was definitely that. And they're very rare cars. If anyone knows anyone with a 1.6 CL estate, tell them to preserve it or sell it to somebody who's going to look after it because they are exceptionally rare. I think there's less than 10 of them, and I'm not joking. This is from my data videos. And you could only get the 1.6 on that car. If you had the hatch, you had the 1.4 CL. But if you bought the estate, you had to have the 1.6. Naturally, that would be stupid to have a 1.4 on that car. So this was when he was a teenager and had many happy memories of travelling to and from school in it on his holidays, and that is what it's all about. It's nostalgia. The declining numbers of Mark 1 Focuses also made me want to own one before they all disappeared. Well, don't worry about that, Adam, because I would still think if you haven't got a Mark 1 Focus, there are still quite a few about. But the difference is in the last, I'd say 12 months, maybe 2 years potentially, is that most of the tired examples are leaving us, and we're seeing an awful lot of high quality models, well looked after, lower mileage examples, and these are commanding much more higher prices than what we have had previous in the last few years. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. Now, he also goes on to say, I bought the 1.6 LX 5-door manual in ink blue. Ink blue is a very nice colour, as we can see in these photos. And I bought it for 1,700 and just under 31,000 miles. And it looked great, and test drove it, and it drove fantastically. However, the driver's door was difficult to open from the outside. So at times I had to open the door from the inside, from the passenger side, to get in. That has happened quite a few times in the past. The linkages are a bit funny, especially if someone in the past has not been very nice to the door handle and has tried to yank on it, and the actual hook that goes on the rod can come off the actual inside of the door handle. And basically he said he took it to a local garage and it was the release rod. It actually wasn't moving, which is sometimes the case. Sometimes they come off, like I've just said, but in this case it wasn't moving. And it was just lubricated, simple as that. And this was in December last year. And then Adam goes on to say, I took the car to my its first car meet at the Motorist on the 1st of January 2023. Great way of starting the new year. And I love the fact that you've gone there, Adam, because that is potentially going to be a meeting place for quite a few times in the future, I can imagine. Certainly me and the admins of the Mark 1 Preservation Group will be going there way more, and it will certainly be a nice place to meet up with a load of people. It's not ideally central, but the idea will be that we can try a few different places, and I like the vibe I got off there, so I'm not surprised you went, and we will be seeing you soon at that place again, Adam, I can assure you. But Adam ended up being parked on the muddy grass field because it was so busy, and he got stuck trying to park it up. That is something that I'm very aware of from a few people when it does get a bit boggy. He needed help from his mate to give him a push onto firmer ground to park up. Goodness me, that must have been an absolute bog. Needless to say, the car was very muddy, and I'd only just cleaned it as well. That is horrible. That is the most really bad. That's bad. That is. You know, you've gone through all the trouble of cleaning your car. You go to a show and you go onto a muddy field, and then it's all muddy, and you just think, why did you bother in the first place? I understand that 100%. And then the next thing he tells me about is there was a knocking noise from the front end, which was the ball joint causing the issue. He got it fixed for the MOT, and he had a timing belt change at the same time this April. Well, it's good to have that done, Adam, as a matter of course, because quite frankly, at a low mileage, even low mileage examples, a lot of people would say, oh, so the time belt's got a lot of life left in it because they say 100,000 miles and it's only done 31, she'll be absolutely fine. No, it's 100,000 miles in 10 years. It's not been changed. Change it again. Low mileage ones are actually worse for this. And this is why I say about low mileage examples, timing belts. Sitting there is not going to be any good for that rubber whatsoever. So ideally, just change it as a matter of course. And well done for doing that, Adam. That is peace of mind for you going forwards. Ball joints getting knocked out. I say this a lot of the time. Those ball joints, those bottom ball joints, they're part of the arm. They are put on with basically pot rivets. I've seen videos where people try to grind them off and then punch them out, and I just think, why have you bothered to do that? Just get another arm, because if the ball joint's knocking, I can assure you those inner bushes are not too far behind, and I've seen that so many times. Just get a new arm. It's actually quicker to do that, so just don't faff. And usually, I'm not being funny, if you're trying to change the individual ball joint, it's usually people that, quite frankly, haven't got two pennies to rub together, and they're trying to get it on the road as cheaply as possible. Do a proper job, do the whole thing, because it will cost you less in the long run. These cheap ball joints, they don't last long at all. These individual ones, they don't last long. And also, because of the way the new ball joint will be mounted to the old arm, you've got to put nuts and bolts through. That's the way it's mounted. And I don't trust those nuts and bolts to actually not shift. And trust me, I've seen a few examples where they can shift if they're not tightened up, and they could come loose. So it's not a good idea. So, Adam, I'm glad that's been done. But Adam has been enjoying the car and drives with around the local area, no issues, and has been taking it on 4 5-hour journeys to concerts and everywhere else that he needs to take it, and no issues, and very comfortable. And that's good to know, because Focus Mark 1s are not exactly considered the most comfortable cars long distance. And I certainly feel a bit funny after a few hours of driving in one. The vibration in a Mark 1 is not as refined as a Mark 2. The engine mountings are certainly, they are definitely in the first sort of gestation of evolution of engine mountings for that car. And they got it right for the Mark II, but the vibration for me is the thing that does me in through my right leg. So in an automatic, I'm only using my right foot. And in motorway driving, you're not changing gear barely at all anyway, if you're a bit of a cruiser. So having your foot on the gas pedal and you've got this constant vibration through the cable, it's not really nice, and it's tiring. It really is. People don't realise this sort of stuff. But it is tiring having a constant vibration through your body, and you just want it to stop. He goes on to say, basically, the exterior and the dashboard, they just look interesting and different, and that's what most people say. Most people will probably say that the build quality isn't great, but they look different. It's not to everyone's taste, though. The dashboards are a bit more bubbly and a little bit all over the place, a little bit less traditional, put it that way. Nothing compared with the Escort. The Escort dashboard was traditional. Focus dashboard was like, what is this? And quite a few manufacturers followed it for a short amount of time, but then it's pretty much been ditched, and most manufacturers have gone back to the traditional style. But there's a lot of waves and curves in modern dashboards, and the Focus Mark 1 was certainly one of the few cars to do that. I know that certain Citroens, Citroen CXs, they have a nice dashboard. I quite like their dashboards, and Citroen have kind of gone that way again. Peugeot have copied theirs as well. It's like an airplane cockpit style dashboard. You know, there's a lot of curvy dashboards, but it's what catches your eye. And a Mark 1 dashboard catches your eye, but it might not be for the most positive reason. The only downside to the car, he says, that is the paintwork, and the paintwork doesn't look the best. But the pictures certainly don't show that, Adam. So you've selected some good pictures there. You can see various scratches, stone chips, imperfections in person. So it's a 10-foot car then, like most of them. Don't worry about that. They're all... Yours is 17 years old, the youngest. You know, let's say that the youngest now are 17 to 18 years old. 18 years old now. So that's to be expected. I don't know why people actually buy a Mark 1 and think, oh, no, I'll get some money off this bloke for a few scratches. Like, no, I'm sorry. That scratches and dents, they come with cars this age. You've just got to take it what it is and just know a good bodywork manual. If you can do the work yourself, well done. And Adam says that he's planning to enjoy the car, keep it thoroughly maintained, and well, you've made a good start sorting the important stuff out, Adam. Timing belts, you know, that's a great way of starting. And also some of the bodywork and underside with rust repairs and proofing once you've got the funds. Honestly, Adam, do you know what? Try some of the basic stuff as well, because you'll find that if you're saving money on the basic stuff, like carry out a servicing, changing the plugs, changing the air filter. Fuel filter's a bit of a pain on a Mark 1. But the basic stuff under the bonnet, spark plugs, air filter, that sort of thing, just basic stuff. Changing the water, for instance, changing the coolant. You can do that at home, it's easy. And you really have to be very silly to get airlocks in a Mark 1. Or there could be some underlying issue why you've got airlocks. And then Adam goes on to say that he has kept the car original and he has not made any modifications to it yet. But that's not to say he wouldn't so far. He hasn't ruled anything out. He's not spotted anything that he wants to change, and he enjoys the originality. And you know what? You can enjoy originality. You can enjoy some subtle modifications here and there that don't really catch the eye, but are there, and they have some useful features. For instance, the 2-litre air deflector. I would recommend that as a subtle modification, because once they're gone from Ford, and I think a lot of people have bought them on the back of my videos. So I'm owed something from Ford for doing that for some reason. They must have had a shock when they had about 7. There must have been about 7 or 8 people that messaged me saying I'm going to get one after I actually showed people the parts number. Just things like that, really. So it is each their own with that. And at the end of the day, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And as the owner, we all have different opinions on what a good modification looks like. So honestly, this is a really cracking car, to be honest with you. It's in really nice condition from all the pictures that I've seen. I mean, even in the engine bay, it is absolutely cracking in there. It's really tidy. It's very honest. That could do with an extra detail, and that will look absolutely fantastic at a show, Adam. And this is a picture of Adam's other car, which is, I've got to be careful when I say this. This is a Mark 7 Ford Fiesta. I've confused Mark 7s and Mark 6s a lot. The truth is, in the rest of the world, it is recognised as a Mark 6. It's not a Mark 7. But in the UK, for some stupid reason, it's a Mark 7. So I'm never going to pretend to know why Ford decided to mix it up in the UK. But it is a Mark 7 Ford Fiesta with the Shark Aston Martin-esque grille, which Ford did on all their cars. The Mark 3 facelift, the Mondeo Mark 5. For me, it was Ford trying to copy an Aston Martin style front. Did it work? Well, they look okay. They look different. I think they certainly achieved that. But it's a cracking car, a Mark 7 Fiesta. It's an absolute cracking car, and it shows a lot of There's a lot of Mark 1 sort of esque qualities underneath it. They definitely kept that secret ingredient with that car. And it is, I've seen this so many times now, that it's very common for people to have a Mark 1 Focus and a Mark 7 Fiesta because they are extremely similar cars. I mean, look at the size between the two cars. In fact, I would say a Mark 1 Focus is fractionally taller than a Mark 7, not necessarily any longer and not any wider. So in dimensions wise, you can see how cars have grown, but how and why, that is a great thing if you want to own an example of each of these cars. So, you know, Adam, thank you so much for sharing these wonderful photos and for wanting your car featured, because quite frankly we have to celebrate this. And this is Adam with his Focus, and quite frankly, lovely to see you enjoying your car. So this is exactly what I wanted to showcase. Individual cars. I mean, Adam hasn't had his Focus very long, but at the end of the day, Adam intends to keep it long term, and that's the main thing. And I'm so chuffed that I've managed to influence yet somebody else to actually go and buy one, and he's enjoying it. So do you know what? That really tickles me a lot. So you know what? Once again, thank you very much for all the information and sharing the love with us, Adam. And I will see you very soon, Adam. And to everybody else, onwards to the next one.